Hey, Dooberteers, welcome back to our show. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Natalie from Humane Action, Pennsylvania, because for a lot of reasons, she's going to talk about all the amazing things that they're doing. But she's somebody that has passed almost 30 animal welfare laws, which is really, as I always say, is the long game in trying to help animals. And she's somebody that I'm super jealous of because she's been to more than 50 countries now in the world. And so I've got to catch up to her. But Natalie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
I'm really excited to have you. So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your role and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Ohio and moved to Pittsburgh for college in 2003. Basically, been here ever since. I've always been, interested in helping animals, but never really thought of it as being a career path.
Yeah.
And so my professional training and background is actually in mathematics. And I was a mathematics instructor at a couple of universities in the Pittsburgh area for several years, and just, kind of did the volunteer thing with my love for animals. Like I think a lot of people getting started in their journey, I, volunteered at a shelter, walking dogs and cuddling the cats.
Yeah.
And then I got more interested in farm animal welfare. And so I helped out at a couple of farm sanctuaries. And of course, I loved it. It was very rewarding. And that kind of volunteer work is so incredibly valuable. But in 2015, I stumbled upon this new organization that was being formed. It was called Humane Action Pittsburgh at the time. I went to their first meeting, and basically, they were focused on trying to get to the more systemic causes of, why do animals end up in shelters and these farm sanctuaries? So, working through policy, education, and getting the community involved in, being proactive. And that really resonated with me. Like I loved going to the shelter and, walking a few dogs, but I thought, well, if I can work to pass a law, I could help hundreds or maybe even thousands of dogs. And so I joined the group. So I'm one of the founding members actually. And we've obviously grown a lot, right? We're now Humane Action Pennsylvania. We were an all volunteer organization up until 2022. And then we were able to bring on some staff, including me. So I've been an employee with the organization since 2022. And I think we're a little bit, different, as I kind of alluded to, because we're not a rescue or shelter. We're not doing direct care. But we're focused on that policy and educational work. And also, I think we're a little bit unique in the sense that we look at animal welfare through the lens of how it's connected with other social issues. And so we have environmental campaigns, we have human health campaigns, we have domestic violence campaigns, but all coming at them through the lens of animal protection. And so we're really kind of able to widen our circle of compassion in that way, and, bring in advocates who may not consider themselves quote unquote animal lovers, but we're still able to get them involved in our work because, they're interested in whatever that tangential issue is. So that was a really long answer to your question.
I love
Sorry.
it. That was a great introduction, though. I mean, and it is super cool because, like you said, you're not doing the direct care. But I want to come to that fact that I shared. I mean, you've been part of facilitating, initiating almost 30 animal welfare laws. From where I said, I mean, I've done zero. So that seems like a lot, and it seems like it can have a lasting impact. So as you said, those laws now are going to last for many years and are going to affect tens of thousands of animals.
The idea, of course, when I remember back in 2015, we had an idea to pass a law in Pittsburgh to ban the retail sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits that were not from rescues or shelters. I shouldn't say we had the idea. I mean, other people had also done it, but we wanted to bring it to Pittsburgh. And, I didn't have really any experience, professionally in policy work. I didn't even know who my city council member was, but I looked them up and I called them and asked him to have coffee, and we met for coffee and pitched him the idea. He loved it. Being always an organization that is prepared, we already had draft language and everything ready to go. So the bill was introduced and passed in a meeting in a matter of like 3 weeks, I think.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, wow, this is really
Yeah,
easy.
let's do more of this.
Yeah. And then the second bill that we wanted to work on in Pittsburgh was effectively getting rid of animal circuses. And that took about 3 years. So it's
Okay.
it's definitely sometimes you find a legislator who, they really, the work really resonates with them, and just circumstances come together that you can get things quickly. But more often not, policy work is definitely not for people who need instant gratification. I think it takes an average of 7 years typically for a bill to become law.
Wow.
So I think we're really lucky to have been able to pass almost 30 in going on 11 years now.
That is impressive. And I mean, it sounds like you're very prepared. Like you said, you've gotten better at this, but that's also going to be hard for you to stay motivated yourself and to motivate your staff with there's got to be so many hurdles and you think you're making progress and then it sidetracks. How do you keep everybody motivated?
Yeah, I mean, I think just everybody, that's on the team is really just in this for the animals. And so it can be really frustrating, but there's that intrinsic motivation to keep going, because if we don't, who else will?
Yeah.
We haven't found a lot of organizations doing the type of work that we're doing, especially in Pennsylvania. And so, you really just need to stay focused on the fact that the animals need us to not give up. And we also do a lot of work outside of just policy where we are having wins that are a little bit quicker. So that's helpful too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you mentioned there's not a lot of groups like you. I mean, my initial thought was, is there a humane action? Well, I'm in Florida, right? Is there one in Florida? Is there one in Alabama? But it doesn't sound like there's the same level of focus and structure as what you guys have done.
Yeah, we are really grateful to be in a lot of coalitions with organizations across the country doing similar work in some respects. So, we're in a coalition, for example, of groups working on farm animal policy.
Mm.
But, we're doing that, but also more. So, we haven't necessarily found a group really in the country that we're aware of that's doing the policy work, but also the education, and also the community gatherings that we're doing with a focus on all animals as well. So, we do work on companion animal issues, but also wildlife and farmed animals. And like I mentioned earlier, those interconnected social issues.
Yeah, that's what I really love about what you guys are doing is the breadth of what you're doing and recognizing that, as you rightly said, the social issues that we often overlook, they're so tied in to what's happening with animal welfare. There's a lot I've seen in just in my short career with domestic abuse and things like that. And the animals being a part of that situation makes it harder. And so recognizing the holistic and why are these animals at risk, as you said, there's all sorts of reasons for that. And so I really love the fact that you guys are not just saying, hey, we're just going to do this. Like you're really looking at this more broadly to say educationally and community wise and all of these things. Legislation is one tool in your quiver.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, at least right now, we found animal welfare advocates don't necessarily have the political capital that a lot of other movements have. So, we find it very helpful to coalition build and work with maybe partners that you wouldn't necessarily expect an animal welfare organization to be working on. Just to give you a couple of examples, the first statewide bill that we led, I mean, we had supported other state bills, but the first bill that we really led at the state level that passed was in 2024. We passed a bill that allowed for companion animals to be explicitly included in protection from abuse orders for domestic violence survivors. Pennsylvania was one of the only states where judges couldn't explicitly add them like they can children. And as I'm sure you and most people know, that can be a barrier for people experiencing domestic violence to leave because their pets are likely being abused as well. And we were really able to get that done because of the coalition we built with law enforcement. So, we enlisted the Pennsylvania Sheriff's Association and the District Attorneys Association and all these local police departments, and also, domestic violence organizations to join our coalition. And, when lawmakers are getting calls from the president of the Pennsylvania Sheriff's Association, they're listening probably more than they would if it was an animal welfare organization. We're also working on a bill right now. I don't know if we're going to get it passed anytime real soon, but it's to ban intentional balloon releases. The mass balloon releases where people let the balloons go and then they come back down to earth and wildlife ingests them and can harm birds. And we're actually working with hunting organizations and sportsmen gun clubs. And, you wouldn't necessarily think that we would be an ally with those types of groups. And of course, we're not on everything, but we're able to find common ground. And of course, as most people know, the hunting lobby is much stronger than the animal lobby. And so if they can help us achieve this goal, then why wouldn't we work together?
Yeah, I really love your approach to this. I mean, it's fascinating to be for somebody that was a mathematician and professor of mathematics, right? Was there a particular animal, a situation, like what made you go down this path? I'm so glad that you did.
I feel like I'm so old, I don't remember. You just always, loving animals, which I think
Yeah.
most people have that in them. Of course, it started with a love of companion animals, like I think for most people. I heard a guy by the name of Paul Shapiro speak. At the time, he was with the Humane Society of the United States, and he was doing a lot of the work that I'm talking about, in terms of policy, specifically for farmed animals. And he just really resonated with me, and I just thought, and I mean, I never thought it would get to the point where it would be my career, but I thought, oh, maybe there's ways for me to help and get involved. And then, I found that first meeting of Humane Action Pittsburgh, and it all kind of just came together.
Yeah. And now you're setting the vision and setting the strategy and where you guys are going. I'm curious, Natalie, I mean, of all the stuff you've done just to this point, is there anything that sticks in your mind that was really personal to you or that you're most proud of?
I think probably a bill that we passed in 2020. Oh gosh, was it 3 or 4? I can't remember if it was 23 or 24. I'm getting my years mixed up. But it was a Pittsburgh city bill to ban products made from force feeding animals. So if you are familiar with like foie gras, for example, where they're force feeding ducks and geese, multiple times a day with this metal pike down their throat to enlarge their liver. It's so egregiously cruel. Um, and, hardly anywhere in the United States had banned not only the production methods, but the sale of these products. California had, New York City had, although that was in litigation, and that was it. And we wanted to do it in Pittsburgh. We brought the idea to council. It was a very, very uphill battle. The bill passed. Our mayor was going to veto it, actually. And so we had to go into crisis mode at the, 12th hour to try to convince his office not to. Luckily, we were successful in that. And yeah, Pittsburgh really became a leader in that area. And now other, people in other states and other cities call us to say, like, how can we do this in our community? So I think, just bringing awareness to the plight of farm animals who are so often overlooked.
Yeah.
I think that I would have to say that's the one that stands out to me.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I'm curious, how would you describe the state of animal welfare in Pennsylvania, right? I feel like every state, every community, there's nuances, there's differences, but overall, like when you are looking at where to focus your attention, what is it like in Pennsylvania for animals?
I mean, it's tough, right? We're a big hunting state, so it's very difficult, oftentimes, to make progress, at least in policy for wildlife. We're a very heavy agricultural state, so it can often be difficult to make progress for farm animals. And we're often called the puppy mill capital of the East, so it can even be difficult to make progress for companion animals. So on the policy front, it can be tough. We have to, try to choose our priorities, very strategically. What's viable? If something's not viable, is it still worth pursuing just so that we can spread awareness about the issue? Because it takes time and money, of course, to work on all these things. So it's really, we wish we could take up every issue, but obviously we can't. But the people care, right? So that's always really encouraging, no matter where you go, whether it's Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or somewhere more rural, we always find people that care about animals. And so that, of course, makes us feel better about the state of things.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like, as I'm listening to you talk and just again, back to the breadth of what you're trying to do, it seems sometimes insurmountable. How do you define a strategy for a year, for 3 years, for 5 years? Because as you said, you've got limited resources and you have to pick priorities and you have to sometimes put things on the shelf that while it may be a priority for you, it's just the headwinds, right? It's just not the right time. How do you come up with a strategy in that sort of an environment when you have so many possibilities of things that you can do?
It takes a lot of thought, right? A lot of just brainstorming with my team. Luckily, I have a really great director of operations and a lot of really trusted advisors, maybe people that aren't working directly for our organization, but we're partners with them and able to bounce ideas off of them. We're juggling anywhere from, I'd say, 25 to 30 active campaigns at a time. Of course,
Wow.
some of them are heavier lifts than others. But a lot of times people ask for our, 3-year or 5-year strategic plan. And I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but I'm kind of, I don't want to say against having a strategic plan, but I don't feel like it works for our organization. Almost everything that we've been able to accomplish has been because, the stars aligned and we had an opportunity presented to us to take something on, and it was viable and we were able to get it done. So, if I was going to say 5 years ago what we're going to be working on now, it would be so far off base, right? Because we're always building new relationships with people, learning about different issues. And so, yeah, we don't actually do a lot of like very long term planning in terms of our campaigns and priorities.
Okay. No, and I love the way that you said that, right? For your organization, it doesn't make sense. In some organizations, maybe it does. So maybe, Natalie, can you share some of the things, if you're able to, some of the things that you're working on now? Like, what are some of the nearer term priorities or focus areas?
Yeah, so one thing that we're working on, which is really exciting, is last year we launched Pittsburgh's first ever vegan restaurant week. So if you're familiar with the concept of restaurant week, it's the same thing except to showcase plant-based offerings. And so we kind of had like our pilot year last year, and we learned a lot. And in May we're going to be rolling out the second uh, cohort, or not cohort, that's the wrong word, second year of that.
Okay.
And yeah, so we're hoping, to really make it bigger and better because we learned so much from the year before. We're also, in terms of policy work, we're working on introducing a bill at the Pennsylvania state legislature to create an animal abuse registry.
Mm.
And I'm really excited about that because we really haven't heard any opposition to it whatsoever. Again, we're partnering up with law enforcement, just like we did for that bill I mentioned earlier. And so I'm hoping that that makes it maybe more viable to actually move, right? It's so difficult to get attention on bills. So we're hoping that that can help. And trying to think what's like another big one. Oh, we have a mural series. So I mentioned we do a lot of interconnected work. So we do have some art campaigns. It's called Love Your Wild Neighbor, and it's to bring awareness to the plight of urban wildlife. We have an educational resource that lives online that helps people solve wildlife conflicts humanely and effectively, right? So if you have a raccoon in your yard and you don't want them there, instead of having a pest control company come and trap them, and in Pennsylvania they have to be killed because they're rabies vector species, what are humane ways that you can evict the animal? And so in order to get people to use this online resource, we have to make sure they know about it. And so one of the tools that we've used to spread awareness is this mural series where we showcase an animal. Like our first one was a raccoon. We want people to start seeing them as neighbors as opposed to nuisances. And then, the awareness through the mural can help drive traffic to the website where people can learn those tools.
I would love to be a fly on the wall at one of your all's brainstorming sessions because these are just very clever, creative ideas. And I'm guessing this didn't just come to you, right? Like this is something you met as a group and you start spitballing ideas, and then somebody says, "Well, what about this and what about that?" And I was driving past this, and I mean, those sessions must be so powerful and motivating to come up with these ideas that then you guys go implement and go, "Look at this! It actually works."
I mean, I will say, for all of, for every idea that we've had that we've implemented, we've had, 20 that we haven't for whatever reason. But yeah, I think one of our strengths as an organization is our ability to think outside the box. So the urban wildlife campaign that I mentioned, we started wanting to get Pittsburgh to pass a law that animals couldn't be trapped and killed for no reason, right? Because most of these animals don't have rabies. But Pennsylvania state law basically doesn't allow us to do that. And we thought, well, we could try to change state law, but we really don't feel like that's possible. And we don't want to just spin our wheels on something that we're not going to be able to have success with. So we thought, okay, well, let's go with this through an educational lens, I guess. And yeah, so that's kind of how that was born.
Yeah, that's really cool. And as you know, I mean, the education has as a way to change hearts and minds, right? I mean, because it's at all level, people, adults, all the way down to kids. I'm sure there's lots of opportunities for you to say, listen, this is a goal, like you said, of here, the resources exist, but people don't always know to go. And so a campaign, a marketing campaign to educate them and make them aware of resources that are at their disposal is a really good idea and a very creative idea to partner with something that can add beauty to the community in which people live as well.
Right, and again, it's a way also to bring in those non-traditional advocates, right? So, a lot of people, they don't have the warm and fuzzies for deer or raccoons, but they don't wanna see, a wall in their community that has graffiti all over it. So, we take blighted spaces a lot of times in underserved neighborhoods, and we turn them into these works of public art. We have like for going on with the mural campaign, we have like a launch party where we bring the community to celebrate the art and learn more. So, it's all trying again to like bring people into our extended circle of compassion.
This is all so super inspiring. It's fascinating to me to listen to some of the issues and some of the things. And I hate to say, I just keep going back to you started as a mathematician, and it's so amazing what you've been able to accomplish since entering this field and where you're going. It's really inspiring for me. So, as we come to wrap up here, though, Natalie, I'd like to end with our lightning round where we can learn a little bit more about you as a person, really simple questions, right? So, nothing hard. You ready? Okay, so do you prefer puppy breath or kitten purrs?
Puppy breath.
Puppy breath, nice. Are you an early bird or a late night owl?
Definitely early bird.
Okay, so up at the crack of dawn. Let's see, what's the most unexecutive thing that you had to do this week? Could be cleaning a litter box, picking up dog poop somewhere, who knows?
Well, both of those things probably. My gosh, it's lightning and I'm being very slow. I'll go with both of those. I've
Okay.
I've picked up all kinds of poop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're the executive director, and yet you still got to do that. So, what do you do to decompress after a hard day?
My husband and I love to play Yahtzee. We are currently watching The Crown.
Oh,
We love to take our dogs for walks.
okay.
And on the weekend, I like a cocktail.
Nice. I'm with you on that. If your pet or pets wrote a Yelp review of you as a parent, how many stars do you think you'd get?
Really spoiled, so probably not 5 because I don't know, give them enough treats or play fetch enough or whatever. So maybe a 4.
Maybe a 4. Or, you've got a little bit of room for improvement, right? Mom, you need to be home all day. I need playtime constantly. Yeah, I know that feeling. And then my last question, Natalie, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope that, Humane Action Pennsylvania lives on long after me. I am probably the kind of person who's never going to retire. So hopefully I'll be able to, find my successor and, the organization will keep going long after me.
Well, Natalie, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing what you're doing with Humane Action Pennsylvania. I'm super excited. It's very inspirational. I'm going to spread the word to other states and say, you need to talk to her, right? Because we need one of these in every state. Thank you so much for what you and your team are doing to help animals.
Thanks for having me on. I had a great time.